Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Liu, enjoyed our conversation. We covered a wide range of topics. I think it went up to a half an hour or so. I know we only got 5 minutes here. You've come from a unique spot of being a labor secretary in one of the largest economies in the world. I'd love to know what you think has worked well in California that you'd like to see happen on a federal basis. And I'd like you to also put it in context where my own company that got to California roughly 10 years ago, we recognize it as a fairly austere state when it comes to regulations of all sorts. And I think that your report card would be graded by how many businesses choose to move into a state versus moving out. And maybe it's mostly anecdotal, but from our own experience, we would say that it's not necessarily a business-friendly environment. That being said, tell me what you think you've done well in California, what you think you've done poorly at, and what you'd want to bring to the federal level.
Well, thank you so much, Senator. And I will say that just going back to our conversation, one of the things you mentioned was that when you were hiring, you found that there were more people with college degrees than needed, meaning that we need to make sure that those without college degrees have the skills needed for the jobs in their area. I agree with the importance of that point, and that's why I think that we need to focus on, and we have in California, this is one of our successes for sure, is looking at alternative degrees, right? Looking at two-year colleges. We have a very robust community college system that we partner with a lot on the workforce side of things. We need to look at other kinds of credentials and certificates that both meet short-term, the need to employ quickly and the many kind of desires and directions of job seekers. So I think that's one area that I think where we would have some common ground, and if confirmed, would be interested in working with you on for the experiences in your state in meeting the needs of employers and of employees. I'll say another thing about kind of growth of business in California. One of the things that I've seen in my work is that we have all kinds of businesses, both that start there and come there. But one reason businesses come to California is because of the opportunity both to do well and to do good. And so we have, because of our training systems in place, especially again for people who oftentimes would struggle to get a job at all, we're working with a business now who is interested in hiring, but also hiring formerly incarcerated individuals. And so we have a training program for those individuals so that when they come out, they can actually get a job and get a second chance and find security and succeed. And so I think having training programs for the need, but for communities who will benefit from them the most is really important, something that I would hope to bring to the job, and something that I think not only California, but California has some models for.
I'm glad you brought that up, because my experience back in Indiana was that we were wrestling with the Department of Education that was actually throughout the system stigmatizing that pathway of just better high school skills, and the need to nurture as little education for those high demand, high wage jobs, given the cost of how that has now eclipsed the cost of healthcare in terms of annual increases. So good that it seems like in California, at least on workforce development, sounds like that something that you're doing well there. Let's get to another item of big versus small. And when it comes to large business versus small business, and I know your roots are from the small business world, mine as well, do you think there's a place, whether it be in California or at the federal level, that you differentiate on how you treat through labor practices, through rules and guidelines to make it easier to for small businesses, especially how they've been traumatized through the whole journey through COVID. Is there a way to do that and yet make sure that you have the practices that need to be universal there? Is there a way to differentiate? Because I think large business and small business have different characteristics.
Yes, I think that's very important, Senator. I know, when I was growing up, my dad worked side by side with his employees. And so, as we talked about on the training side, I think that there are some investments that small businesses, it's harder for them to make. And so are there ways that we can serve multiple employers by meeting an industry's needs? I think there's also the issue of outreach and education that is primarily really important for all businesses, but especially small businesses who may not have the same level of, a legal department or an HR department. And so we've really, in my time in leadership, focused on outreach to small businesses. I know during the pandemic, we have tried to make sure that supports and assistance to businesses were targeted to small businesses who also might not have the capital, for example, right, to last through the crisis that this pandemic has created. So I do think that we have to look at the real needs on the ground. As you mentioned, through my personal history, I have a real sensitivity to that, and I do think it's very important for us to be thoughtful in our approach. One other thing, Senator, to your point, your earlier point, I think you're absolutely right that on the workforce side of things, there's such an opportunity for collaboration between the Department of Labor and the Department of Education, and if confirmed, I would be very excited to work with my counterpart at the Department of Education so that our education and labor priorities from a workforce perspective are aligned.
Do I have any time left?
No, you're 2 minutes over.
Okay, it seemed that way. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Senator Scott.